Welcome to Lost in Games. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're taking a look at two of the greatest protagonists in gaming, Arthur Morgan and Lee Everett, and talking about what would happen if they swapped places. For this thought experiment, we're going to be looking at four main factors and one set of X factors, scoring each character on a scale of 1 to 5 based on what we know about them and how they act throughout their time in their respective game. We'll also be dissecting how each factor would weigh on the character's ability to exist in the other's game, and tallying up the totals to determine who would fare better if they swapped places. We'll be assuming that each character just woke up in a world that is brand new to them. But, to make things a little simpler, we'll say they fully understand what is happening. They know they've switched with some other random character, so we don't need to spend any time thinking about how they would handle the actual switch mentally. So let's start with survivability. For our purposes, survivability encompasses the ability to handle the world around them and the challenges it might throw their way. We'll look at Arthur first. Surviving in the late 19th century, especially in the western United States where civilization was at a minimum, was a challenge. Even someone with a little wealth, living in a nice house with all the most modern amenities, would be at risk of contracting diseases or getting injuries that, while easily treatable today, could be deadly. You could increase your odds of survival by learning how to care for your own wounds, hunt and prepare your own food, and defend yourself when needed. Arthur Morgan has learned all of these things and more as a member of the Vanderlyn gang. As we witness and participate in his story, we see him learn how to bow hunt, fish, learn what plants can be eaten and which can be turned into medicine and poison, fend off attacks both alone and with help from his friends, and handle a variety of weather events, from a blizzard to violent storms to the dry heat of the desert. Translating these skills into a situation like the zombie apocalypse, he would be more than capable of handling zombies and finding food. Knowing how to find helpful plants would also be a huge bonus when it comes to things like making medicine, or even just making the animal that he caught for dinner taste a bit better. He's also used to setting up and managing camps in a variety of locations, including making sure the camp is well hidden and secure. In addition to all of these experiential factors, he's also used to living without electricity and the modern comforts we are also used to today. Because of all of that, Arthur gets a 5 out of 5 for survivability. Now for Lee. Prior to the start of the outbreak, Lee was a history professor at the University of Georgia. He was likely used to a pretty comfortable setup, with a nice house and car, healthy food, and good health care. He was on his way to jail when society fell, though, having killed his wife's lover in a fit of rage. This tells us that he might have a temper, and that he is willing and able to get violent at times. While that disposition could be very detrimental in civilized society, it is very helpful in the zombie apocalypse. We see him get along alright with most of the people he interacts with at the Motor Inn, and he holds his own when he needs to fight. He's also a decent shot with a gun and can take out both the living and the dead when it comes down to it. Dropping him into 1899 as a member of the Vanderlyn gang, though, we can assume the rough lifestyle might be a difficult adjustment. He does alright living in the zombie apocalypse, where food is scarce and shelter can be hard to come by, but he's still at the mercy of finding food in cans and hoping medicine is available for whatever minor or major injury might ail him. Living in a world where modern medicine isn't just scarce, it's non-existent, and where your survival depends on your ability to kill, clean, and cook most meals, Lee would be at a disadvantage. He wouldn't know the difference between a poisonous plant and something medicinal, and the first time he mixed that up could spell disaster. His knowledge of history could be beneficial, depending on what his focus had been, and he would likely do alright when confronted with needing to defend himself against other outlaws. Overall, Lee gets a 3 out of 5 for survivability. Next up is adaptability. Both Arthur and Lee show a propensity for adjusting well when faced with major changes. For Arthur, we see him go from camp to camp in various environments and situations without having any trouble adjusting to whatever comes his way. Lee goes from the back of a cop car to finding a little girl in need of help to Herschel's farm and the motor inn without any real issues as well. He adjusts to the new world as if he's been living in it for years, and he manages to stay relatively calm even when things go horribly wrong. Both Arthur and Lee get a 5 out of 5 for adaptability. Next up, we'll look at honesty.
Let's say things don't get better back in the cities, or they get worse before they do. You're going to have to depend on the honesty of strangers if you're going to make it. And if those same people get to questioning yours, you're going to be in trouble.
Honesty is important because people need to know that they can trust you when things get tough. If the people you're with think you're a dishonest person, they will be less likely to want to help you out, and you might even find yourself out of the group and on your own. While being a loner is possible in both the zombie apocalypse and the Wild West, both places are generally easier to manage when you've got someone to watch your back. This is one of those things that can be kind of tricky, because while being honest is generally seen as a positive thing, it isn't always the best move. Sometimes, lying is the best way to stay alive. So instead of looking at simply how often each character lies or tells the truth, we're going to look at their actions and try to discern how honest they are overall. Arthur might be considered dishonest on the surface as a member of a criminal gang, but his actions don't always align with his assessment. He generally tries to be honest with the members of the gang, and he's usually honest with other people he meets, though he sometimes shares a fake name when introducing himself. He'll often also note that he is a bad man when talking to people, owning the law-breaking and admitting where he has flaws. We can see him talk about how he sees himself when he talks to Jimmy Brooks.
That's very kind of you. But I'm not a good man, Jimmy Brooks. Not usually. You see, I was in Blackwater. I killed people. And maybe I should have killed you. Should I have killed you, Jimmy Brooks?
Some of the lies he tells can be chalked up to the inherent illegal nature of his lifestyle, but that still counts against him, and he only comes in at 3 out of 5 for honesty. Lee has a few lies by omission, not telling people about his past as a murderer, for instance, but he also doesn't deny the facts when they come to light. The player can choose to make Lee lie in several instances, but overall he comes across as honest and trustworthy.
You're a murderer, Lily. We can't have you with us.
I'm a murderer? You've had Lee with you this whole time.
What are you talking about?
He didn't tell you. He killed someone before all of this. He was a convicted murderer.
Is that true, Lee?
Yes.
Fucking hell. Were you ever gonna get around to telling me that? You got a little girl with you.
While his hesitation to tell anyone about his past is understandable, it does ding his trust score just a bit, putting him at 4 out of 5 overall. Next up, cooperating with a group is extremely important as human beings are a social species, and very few of us would last very long on our own. Not only do we need the companionship that being with a group offers, but having more people means more hands to accomplish tasks, more eyes to watch out for threats, and less risk from those potential threats. But being in a group can be harder for some people than it is for others. Looking at Arthur, he is a member of the Vanderling gang and has been for years. He pulls his weight around camp and works well with most of the members of the group. Even when he has problems getting along with other members of the gang, he can set aside differences to get things done. He's rough around the edges at times, however, which could be a problem when working with people like Kenny or Lily. He would probably go out of his way to manage the community at the motor inn, and would likely get along with almost everyone in his own way. I would imagine he wouldn't take too kindly to having a gun pointed at him by Vernon, though, and he would likely be annoyed at how loud and condescending someone like Larry is. He might hold his temper for the most part, but he would probably be just as likely to shoot either of them and move on. Because of that, he winds up scoring a 4 out of 5 for ability to get along with groups. Lee has some of the same issues, though he is often more diplomatic and is normally able to settle disputes in calm, otherwise tense situations. His ability to play referee between Kenny and Lily, to get Kenny to stop the train when Duck is dying, and to manage the situation with the cancer survivors group are all examples of how good he is at working with people. He would be likely to participate in chores around the camp and would probably be of a similar disposition as Hosea when it comes to the group dynamic. He might even be able to talk Dutch down at times, and I could see him getting along with everyone in the group, except maybe Micah, who is just too easy to hate for his own good. All of this combines to push Lee to a 5 out of 5 score for ability to get along with groups. So if you're keeping track at home, both Arthur and Lee have 17 out of a possible 20 points in the comparison. But we're not done, as there are some intangibles we need to consider. We'll start with Arthur. Coming from the year 1899 into the Walking Dead world, where the outbreak started in 2003, would be a bit of a shock to the system at times. Things like electricity and motor vehicles becoming common over the course of the 20th century would take some getting used to. Though this adjustment would be somewhat mitigated as the world fell further into chaos and became more like 1899 than the mid-2000s. Arthur could potentially have some immune system issues if he came into contact with some of the bacteria and viruses that modern people have mostly gotten used to. This would of course be a secondary concern as people are eating each other, but he might also have a different response to the virus or bacteria that is causing the zombie outbreak than modern people. He could be immune to it, or it could even cause him other unanticipated side effects. These things are both rather minor, and Arthur scores 4 out of 5 in the X Factor category. Lee would have to get used to a lower level of technology, but he would have to put up with that either way over time, so the technological change wouldn't affect him as much. He could also have some trouble with diseases that have been wiped out in the 100 or so years that he's gone back in time, but he likely wouldn't have much more trouble than Arthur would with dealing with the new pathogens, and he wouldn't have to worry about the zombie outbreak. It is worth noting that it would be possible that he could carry the pathogen responsible back with him, since everyone in the modern era was infected to begin with. But there is no definite answer to how it is spread other than by someone dying and reanimating or being bitten. So as far as we can tell, he wouldn't likely have to face any problems until he died and started what would be an interesting DLC for Red Dead Redemption 2. But Lee would actually face something that Arthur doesn't have to deal with in Red Dead. Something that could actually cause him a lot of problems. I'll leave it up to Kenny to reveal Lee's biggest issue with living in 1899.
Hey, Lee, you know how to pick a lock, right?
No. Why would you say that?
Well, you're, urban?
Oh, you are not saying what I think you're saying.
That might not have been Kenny's best moment, but it is actually really light compared to what Lee would likely have to face as a black man in the South in the 19th century. The problem especially comes to light as the Vanderlyn gang moves into Lemoyne, and he would have a rough time trying to do much with the gang when they're trying to handle the Greys and the Braithwaites. For the most part, the gang, once again excluding Micah, who's just a complete piece of trash, would be fine with Lee and would be more interested in his skill set and loyalty than the color of his skin. But he would face some serious challenges outside of the gang. That's not to say that it would be impossible for him to get by, but it would seriously hurt him, and it drops him to a 2 out of 5 when it comes to X Factor score. So with the X Factors added in, Arthur comes up to 21 out of 25 and Lee clocks in at 19, making Arthur the overall winner. That isn't to say that he would be guaranteed to survive longer than Lee, but I think that he would be better equipped to take on the challenge of living in a zombie apocalypse than Lee would be to living in an outlaw gang in 1899. Both of them would have some interesting challenges to overcome, and both would likely handle the various situations in each game in very different ways than we're used to. For instance, I think Arthur would be a reluctant ally to Clementine. I think he'd accept her company, though unwillingly at first, and I think she would soften him up over time. I also think that he would have been more likely to want to make the Motor Inn a permanent camp while dealing with the raiders like they were some nameless O'Driscolls or Lemoyne Raiders. Lee would probably be a bit more pragmatic than Arthur when it came to participating in the overall leadership of the gang, focusing on the ways they could make money legally and trying to reason with Dutch more instead of following him despite his poor decisions later in the game. I could see him spending a ton of time with Hosea and Lenny, probably preventing both of their deaths through different decisions and actions. But I really want to know what you think. Would Arthur be better off in Lee's world than Lee would be in his? Were my scores fair? What would be the most interesting decision or part of the game that you'd like to see from both characters in a swap? This video is a completely new concept here on the channel, so I'd also like to know what you thought of it in general, and if there are any other character swap type videos that you'd like to see in the future. I'm trying to find new ways to branch out and make content that you'll all want to see, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. For those who love early access and behind the scenes stuff, or who just want to support the channel in other ways, I've got a channel membership and a Patreon. I've also got a Discord server where you can hang out with me and the rest of the community and chat about games, movies, books, or whatever else you might be interested in talking about. Both that and the Patreon are linked in the description down below. As always, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.